Prince Woble Ro is King Nasubi's youngest daughter. She's his 14th legitimate child, she's one of the candidates battling it out in the succession war, and she's a baby. If you're thinking that means she has to survive because, Togashi wouldn't do that, right? Well, don't get too comfortable. He would, he has. But don't get too uncomfortable either. Woble is not defenseless. She's got her mom looking after her, the very resourceful 8th Queen Oito. She's got a guardian beast granted to her by the Seed Urn ceremony, although we haven't actually seen it yet. And most importantly, she's got Kurapika as her bodyguard, and besides being our protagonist, he's also got a lot of good work experience protecting the daughter of a powerful family. Now, with Woble's story being so entwined with Kurapika's, this video will be our big chance to talk about him. He hasn't really been around since the Yorknu arc, which was about 200 chapters ago now, so we gotta catch up a bit, find out how and why he got on the boat in the first place. Then we'll walk through his very complicated first day on the Black Whale, we'll talk about his overall strategy for the war, and then we'll make some guesses about what he might do next. But don't worry, we're not gonna focus so much on Kurapika that we forget about the baby prince in the title of the video. You might not care about Woble yet, but Kurapika does. How much he cares about her is an open question, and it's going to be one of the big questions of the story. So let's get through the setup and we'll be able to start asking it. We'll do the cold, hard plot stuff first. So Periston and Jing quit the Zodiacs to join Beyond's DC team. Congratulations, Leorio, you're a Zodiac now, because the whole Hunter Association loves you, and the Zodiacs like having high approval ratings. Leorio recommends Kurapika for the other opening, so Mizaistum drops in on the Nostrad family to recruit him, and he comes prepared. See, Kurapika wants to recover all the Scarlet Eyes, and Mizaistum's got info on the last remaining eye collector that he hasn't been able to find yet on his own. That collector is Kakin's 4th Prince Serednik, and he's going to be on the boat, so Kurapika makes a career change. He's now got the same job as Leorio, who has not finished med school. Okay, sidebar about Kurapika's previous job. In some translations, these Nostrad goons call him boss, so there are people who infer from this that Kurapika has been the boss of the Nostrad family, like the big boss. I've even seen posts suggesting that he married Neon Nostrad, and then her father Light stepped down and left Kurapika in charge. But this is all a misunderstanding. The goons actually call him the underboss. He's their boss, for sure, but he's not the head of the family, and why would he want to be? It doesn't make sense. Confusion on this point is so rampant that it has spread to the fandom wiki, so I had to address it here. Let's move on. Anyway, Kurapika joins the Zodiacs, and he helps them out by detecting some of Periston's spies, but Mizaistum mainly wants his help for the actual DC mission. For the 2 months on the Black Whale en route to the new continent, he's free to pursue his own objective, namely the 4th Prince. How's he gonna get close to him? Well, 6 of Kakin's princes have just posted anonymous help wanted ads on the internet. They're hiring extra security for this trip for some reason. There's 6 different ads and only one Kurapika, so he hires some old friends to help him out. They answer all 6, and now he'll be close to the royal family, and he'll have a friendly spy network close at hand to pass him information. Incidentally, Periston also saw these help wanted ads as an opportunity to get more spies on board, so great minds think alike. Kurapika shows up for his job interview, and this is where 8th Queen Oito and 14th Prince Woble enter the story. Oito wrote her anonymous ad in such a way that it would trick a careful reader into thinking it was 9th Prince Hulkenberg's, and she did a good enough job that it fooled Kurapika. He was hoping to get close to Hulkenberg since that's the only sibling Serednik is tight with. Hulkenberg has a lot of enemies, so this ad was designed to attract a very clever assassin, which is exactly who Oito wants to hire because, surprise, it's not routine guard duty here, it's the succession war. Everybody's gonna be killing everybody. Kurapika explains what he's really after and says he'll protect Woble as long as Oito helps him as much as she can with the 4th Prince. Smooth sailing as long as circumstances never force him to choose one of these 2 goals over the other. Alright, we're caught up on plot, so let's spend a minute here on the soft, mushy character side of things. We already see this conflict coming, right? Like, this is what we saw happen in Yorknu. Ultimately, Kurapika had to choose between his mission and his friends. It's a choice about who he is. For most of Yorknu, he was willing to kill innocent people, sacrifice his own humanity, sacrifice his life, if that's what it took to kill some spiders. He was on his way to becoming another Krollo. But at the critical moments, he chose different. He decided revenge wasn't worth it if it meant losing the people close to him. He chose life instead of death, the future instead of the past, all that good stuff. It all goes back to what Jing said. What mattered most wasn't the revenge he set out for, it was literally the friends he met along the way. But as this arc begins, we see that making that choice once wasn't enough to fix him. This is not a happy Kurapika who's come to terms with his guilt and moved on with his life. He did give up on getting revenge, but now his all-consuming obsession is recovering the Scarlet Eyes, and he acknowledges that he's sacrificing his humanity to this obsession. Even worse, when he gets them all back, he thinks he'll have nothing left. He's not excited to wrap this up and start a new chapter, he sees this as the end of his story. So that's depressing, but he didn't count on meeting Oito and Woble along the way. When this story reaches its own critical moment, he can decide again if his mission is really worth what he'd have to give up. He can decide that, on second thought, he does have something to live for. So, as complicated as the plot is about to get, this is just something to keep in the back of your mind, that choice is coming and those are the stakes. It's also worth reiterating that he's not hunting the spiders anymore, so you shouldn't expect an epic rematch against Crollo. That would be a regression for Kurapika's character, to take up revenge again when his whole previous arc was about deciding against it. But we can't get bogged down in any more character analysis here because of the thing I just said a second ago. The plot is about to get complicated, and this next part is as dense as the setup is gonna get. We're being thrown right in the deep end here, but don't worry, the exposition is punctuated by just a lot of people dying. It's a bloodbath, it's great. So the Black Whale has set sail, and one of Woble's guards is dead. Scratch that, about half of Woble's guards are dead. Alright, enough messing around, time to find out who these people are. Kurapika is far from the only guard with an ulterior motive. Turns out these guys work for Periston, and they thought this was a nothing assignment to get them on the boat so they could join up later with Beyond. They didn't even know about the Succession War, whereas these two guys and the 5 dead guys are all Queen's Guards, each one loyal to one of the 7 queens senior to 8th Queen Oito. The Queen's Guards do know about the war, and they're loyal to the children of their queens, meaning that by the nature of the Succession War, they're all enemies to Woble. So besides the personal guards working directly for each prince, we have to consider the whole category of guards who work for queens, but get assigned to princes. The Queen's Guard system favors seniority. Each queen can assign guards to protect all the lower ranking queens, but the lower queens don't get to return the favor. So for example, 4th Queen Quatrono has a spy network among queens 5 through 8, but she's getting spied on by queens 1, 2, and 3. As the 8th queen, Oito has no Queen's Guards and no spy network, so it's a good thing that Kurapika brought his own. As they're talking about all this, they get a glimpse of some of the prince's guardian beasts, emerging for the first time because the Succession War just kicked off. Kurapika quickly grabs a phone and shouts a warning to all channels about these roaming Nen beasts. Nen is supposed to be a secret, so yapping about it to all the Tier 1 guards who don't know Nen already is a big decision. But it's not one that Kurapika is making carelessly here. He's already making plays, and we'll get back to this. Meanwhile, Sayerd, one of Beyond's boys, has been possessed by a guardian beast, causing him to kill 3 more of Woble's guards, namely both of the remaining Queen's Guards and one of his Beyond buddies. Kurapika wants some info on how these beasts work, so he uses Stealth Dolphin to put Sayerd in Zetsu just to see if that'll kill him. Kinda brutal, but knowledge is power. He does that by temporarily stealing his ability. Sayerd is lucky enough to survive, so he's immediately arrested for murder and hauled off by the Kakin army, who are effectively the cops here and not to be confused with Benjamin's private army. 2 of Oito's 4 servants quit in terror, so room 1014 is now down to 2 servants and 2 guards, Kurapika and Bill. Bill is the last remaining Periston spy, and for lack of anyone else to talk to, Kurapika gets to know him. Cool guy. Didn't know about the Succession War, but he was hired to protect Woble, and that's what he's gonna do. Well, enough small talk. A member of Benjamin's private army is here now, and he immediately kills the servant who opens the door for him. 1 servant left. Let's talk about these guys in the puffy jackets. So, first Prince Benjamin has the authority to assign members of his own private army as royal guards to the lower princes. If they refuse to let these obvious spies in the room, they'll be arrested and very likely meet some kind of terrible accident while in custody. So this is another case where seniority is conferring a massive advantage, just like with the Queen's Guards. Benjamin can see the whole board, and his pieces aren't just spies, they're assassins. This one, Vincent, sees that the room is practically empty before he got here, and he's just gonna cut to the chase. Once again, Kurapika uses Stealth Dolphin to steal Vincent's Nen ability and put him in Zetsu, after first clearing space in his inventory by injecting Oito with Sayurd's ability. Then he threatens him with the power to make him confess what he did and who ordered it, which would mean legal trouble for Benjamin. Remember, everyone has to keep up appearances despite the war. And Vincent promptly bites down on cyanide. Benjamin and Balsamico hear the confession threat, just like Kurapika meant them to, and they err on the side of caution. They send Baby Mina, a soldier with a defensive ability, to replace Vincent and keep tabs on Kurapika rather than rushing to finish off Woble. So, Baby Mina's at the door, and the phone's ringing. It's first Prince Benjamin, third Prince Zhongli, and fifth Prince Tubeba, all at once. Kurapika tells the last remaining servant, Shimano, to put Benjamin on, but when he picks up, it's Zhongli. He wants to deal. Since Kurapika put out that warning about Nen beasts, he must know about Nen, so Zhongli wants information in return for an alliance. Meanwhile, Benjamin's hung up, so Kurapika talks to Tubeba's man, who wants more or less the same thing. Kurapika politely asks Shimano to explain why she disobeyed him, and she says she was just trying to help. Talking to Benjamin wouldn't change anything. Kurapika has to admit that he doesn't know these princes that well and he could use her advice. She thinks Zhongli is the type of guy he can deal with, so they head over to his room to deal, leaving Bill behind with Baby Mina. They tell Zhongli about Nen and he lends them a couple of his guards. They also get Slacka, a Queen's Guard currently spying on Zhongli, for second Queen Dwazel. He just got new orders to spy on Woble instead. So Kurapika's made his first alliance, and he gets back to room 1014 with some more manpower, but also some more spies. Now, remember when Oito got injected with Sayurd's ability? That ability, Rear Window, lets the user take control of a small animal. Kurapika wants her to use it for some recon, but he doesn't want to give away what they're doing in front of all their new buddies. So he has Bill pretend to manipulate this cockroach as part of a Nen demonstration for Zhongli's guards as a cover for what's really going on. Bill wins Best Supporting Actor, Oito gets the roach into the vents and starts gathering intel, and Kurapika promises the new arrivals that he can teach them Nen in 2 weeks, as well as any volunteers from other princes' camps. This Nen class is Kurapika's big plan. He's offering something pretty much everyone wants, and as long as he's useful, he's not a target. This is how Woble's gonna make it through the next 2 weeks alive. But not every prince will be so lucky. The Oito roach is checking up on their neighbors and it sees 12th Prince Mimosa being murdered in her bed. It's too late to save her, and Kurapika, ice cold, asks her to keep gathering intel. This ability is a one-time only deal. If they switch it off now, it'll return to Sayurd, and so they can't waste this chance. Bill says that most of the princes agreed to send personnel to the Nen class tomorrow, so that's good. And Kurapika keels over from using Emperor Time for too long. 9 hours later, Kurapika wakes up to find that Oito also passed out because she was connected to him via Stealth Dolphin. The good news is the ability is still active. The bad news is he just let Emperor Time run for 9 hours straight, and every second of Emperor Time costs him an hour off the end of his lifespan, so his life just got 3.5 years shorter while he was napping. Well, no use crying over spilled milk. He has the Oito roach try to scout out the 4th prince's room, and it gets eaten in the vents by Saridnik's guardian beast. So after all that, they have no more info than they had 9 hours ago. He tells Oito thanks anyway, finally turns off Emperor Time after more than 12 hours total, and that's a wrap on day 1. That's also going to be a wrap on this page-by-page style of recap. All the big opening moves have been made. The pieces are in place. Now we get to step back and talk about strategy. Kurapika's always got one of those, right? So where did that day 1 get us? Where did it get Woble? This is still a video about Woble. Well, we're a day into the war, and one of the princes is dead, but it's not Woble, who, remember, is a baby, so I think she's overperforming. Her retinue has been pared down to just the most clever, capable, and loyal of the bunch. Her mom's a Nen user now. The 3rd and 5th princes both want an alliance with her. Our girl is doing pretty good. Oh yeah, so Oito got awakened to Nen when Stealth Dolphin lent her the ability. That's why Kurapika can promise to teach Nen in 2 weeks. He has a Nen attack that he can use on a normal person without crippling them. Anyway, at this point, the story setup lightning round is over and things settle down into more of a routine. Kurapika teaches his Nen class, an assassin murders some of his students, he wonders who it is. That's his next 2 weeks on the boat. We could talk about his students, but they all belong to the other princes, and this is Woble's video, so I'll talk about them later. We could talk about the assassin, but that's the silent majority murder mystery, and I'll be diving into that in the 4th video in this series, so stay tuned. The only point to make for now is that Silent Majority's victims get drained of their blood, just like those first 5 dead Queen's guards, so we can deduce that Silent Majority killed those guys too, meaning it wasn't Woble's guardian beast, despite that being Kurapika's initial guess, meaning Woble's beast is still a wild card. Now, like I was saying, the Nen class has mostly solved the problem of Woble's short-term safety. The threat of a confession-forcing ability convinced Prince Benjamin to take a wait-and-see approach with Room 1014. And that's extremely important because the Nen class is hurting Benjamin the most. Adding more and more Nen users onto all sides of the war naturally has the effect of evening the playing field a bit, and new Nen users who are bodyguards are bound to develop defensive abilities, which will stall out the war even more. That's good for everyone who wasn't already in the strongest position, meaning the Nen class is good for everyone except Benjamin. So, no one's going to be attacking Kurapika for the time being, and as of chapter 400, he's got actual alliances with both Zhongli and Tubeba. But how does he improve his position from here? What does he get out of stalling? Well, there was the idea put forward by Bill that if he could contact Beyond or Pariston, they could set him up with a way off the ship, and that could be a way to save Oito and Woble. But we've seen an escape attempt since then, and it didn't go well. Besides, even if Oito and Woble did get away, that would mean Kurapika's out of the war, and he doesn't want that yet because he hasn't done what he came to do. Speaking of which, Serednik has used these 2 weeks to become one of the strongest Nen users alive, so that's what you get when you put things off. If escape's not an option, that leaves surviving the war by killing every other prince, unlikely, or surviving with the help of an alliance. We've already got Zhongli and Tubeba, and both of them seem open to letting the younger princes like Woble live if they win the war. So maybe this coalition of mercy can bring all the younger princes together, take down the psycho elder siblings, and then nobody else has to die. And that might be the play, to take down Benjamin before his private army kills everyone. But it's not going to be enough to end the war. For one thing, Tubeba hates Zhongli. She wanted to team up with Serednik against him, and both of them are elder princes, so they're both going into this alliance knowing that a backstab is coming and planning their own. When their common enemies are dead and they inevitably go to war with each other, they'll both demand loyalty from the younger princes, and the coalition will devolve into slaughter. Kurapika could try to keep things unified by assassinating one of these elder princes before we get to that point, but that might scare the other one into saying, hey, these lesser princes are too dangerous after all, my crown isn't safe while they're still alive. There's no perfect option for carrying an alliance all the way through to the end, and he can't even be sure the war would end if he did. He hasn't seen the sarcophagi room yet, but we have. So that's where we leave Kurapika and Prince Woble. In the short term, the Nen class is keeping them alive. In the medium term, an alliance led by the 3rd and 5th princes is their best bet against the more belligerent princes like Ben and Cammy. But in the long term, that alliance is doomed to fall apart, and we don't know how Kurapika plans to handle that. If it ever comes to a showdown, he and Bill just can't take on a larger faction by themselves, so that's game over. At this rate, I think Kurapika has to hope that there's some kind of big shakeup in the war. And there might be. Maybe Morena's faction will crash into Tier 1 and start simplifying the board. Maybe Pariston will betray Nasubi and try to stop the war early for his own reasons. Or maybe the spiders will show up. Kurapika doesn't know they're on board yet, but we do, and we know they got on the Black Whale in the first place to rob the Hueguo Rose. That means they share at least one goal with Kurapika, which is stealing from Serednik. I already said there won't be a Kurapika versus Crollo rematch, but there could be a team-up instead, if that's what it takes to take on Serednik, or if that's what it takes to protect Oito and Woble. Who knows? That is a direction this could go. We'll have to wait and see. For now, that's all for Prince Woble. In the next video, I'll be talking about 12th Prince Mimosa, the first victim of the Succession War. Obviously, that will be a much shorter video than this one, but it'll be a good chance to talk about guardian beasts, which is a topic I've mostly glossed over so far. So, look forward to it. I'll see you next time.